If you've ever played sports, gone to the gym, or scrolled Christian Instagram, you've seen this verse used. Philippians 4:13 says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." It's on t-shirts. It's in Instagram bios. It's tattooed on arms. And it's usually used to mean something like God will help me win, or God will help me succeed, or God will help me achieve my biggest dreams. But what if I told you that Philippians 4:13 has almost nothing to do with success, or at least not the way we usually think about it? What if this verse isn't about conquering the world, but about being okay when you don't? Today we're going to talk about one of the most misunderstood verses in the Bible. We're going to talk about what Paul actually meant when he wrote it, and why contentment, not achievement, is the real miracle in this verse. So let's be honest. Philippians 4:13 is often treated like a Christian power-up verse. You say this to yourself, or you post it online when you're about to take a big test, or start a business, or compete in a game, or chase a dream, and you say, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And the problem isn't that God strengthens people, because he certainly does. The problem is that we've ripped this verse out of its context and turned it into a blank check. Because if Philippians 4:13 means Christ empowers me to succeed at whatever I attempt, then what happens when you lose the game? What happens when you fail the exam, or you don't get the job, or you pray and things still fall apart? Did Christ suddenly stop strengthening you? Certainly not. Paul wasn't writing a hype slogan. He was writing from prison, which should already make us pause and reflect. So let's look at the context. Paul writes Philippians while imprisoned, most likely being imprisoned in Rome. He's not free, he's not comfortable, he's not successful by any worldly standards. And yet Philippians is one of the most joyful letters in the New Testament. That alone should tell us that something is different here. This is a man who has been beaten, he's been neglected, he's been rejected, imprisoned, misunderstood, and persecuted. And yet he writes about joy. He writes about peace and contentment. That doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from perspective. So let's zoom out and read the verses around Philippians 4:13, because context changes everything here. When you read verse 12 of Philippians 4, Paul says, "I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need." Then comes the famous verse, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Notice what the term all things refers to. Not winning, not success, not achieving dreams, but enduring every circumstance faithfully. Paul defines all things before he ever says the phrase. So when Paul says all things, he means being hungry and being full, having abundance and having nothing, being respected and being forgotten, being free and being imprisoned, being celebrated and being rejected. Philippians 4:13 isn't about doing more. It's about enduring more without losing your faith. Paul is saying, I can remain faithful. I can remain joyful. I can remain grounded no matter what situation I'm in because Christ strengthens me. That's a much quieter miracle, but it's also a much deeper one because contentment doesn't come naturally. In verse 12, Paul literally says, "I have learned the secret of being content." A secret is not something that you have prior knowledge of. If you do, then it's not a secret. But Paul says, "I have learned the secret of being content." So that means that contentment is not automatic. It's not something that we already know. It's not circumstantial. It's not personality based, but it's learned. And the secret isn't self-discipline. It's not emotional numbness. It's not positive thinking. The secret is Christ as the source, not your circumstances. Paul isn't saying, I feel strong all the time. He's saying, Christ give me strength to stay faithful when life doesn't change. That's huge, because most of us are praying for God to change our situation. We're saying, God, get us out of this situation, or God, get me to where I want to go now. Do it on my timeline. While Paul is saying, God, sustain me in it. Sustain me in my current situation. So what happens when we misuse this verse? Well, when we misuse Philippians 4:13, we unintentionally tie God's faithfulness to our success. We treat Christ like a tool for our personal achievement. We turn God into a means to our goals, and we set ourselves up for spiritual disappointment. But when we understand it correctly, this verse becomes hope for suffering, strength for waiting, peace in uncertainty, stability in chaos, and faith for long seasons. Philippians 4:13 isn't for when you're winning. It's for when you're still faithful and nothing's changed. It's for when you're trusting God and still struggling. For when you're obeying even when it's costly, or walking through delay, or living in unanswered prayer. That's where Christ's strength shows up most clearly. So yes, say Philippians 4:13. Memorize it. Put it on your social media biographies. But don't say it as I can achieve anything. Say it as I can endure anything God allows me to walk through. Because real strength isn't always about overcoming, but sometimes it's about remaining. Remaining faithful, remaining obedient, remaining grounded, remaining surrendered. And that kind of strength, that's Christ-centered, that's biblical, and that's mature faith. So the real miracle of Philippians 4:13 isn't conquest, it's contentment. Not changing circumstances, but unshaken faith inside of them. And that's the strength that Christ actually promises.